it keeps us all on. Afternoon. Welcome to the One Health session. My name is Julie Turton. I'm the Climate Health Program Director at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm also the One Health lead there. But in this context, I am honored to be co-chairing the GEO Health Group on Earth Observations. Afternoon. Welcome to the One Health session. My name is Julie Turton.
No, you need to. We'll be getting started in just a minute. We're waiting for our cue from Rui. She's trying to get a few more people into the rooms, but we'll get it going in just a minute. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the best session of this GEO Symposium. We're really glad that you are here with us today. And thank you to all the panelists and all the work that you've put in prior. Really appreciate the GEO Secretariat for organizing this effort. There's been a lot of interactions, emails, and a lot of actually some phone calls just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this is the One Health session. And it's really trying to sort of see how, in the context of the Earth Intelligence for All, both the strategy and the GEO Work Program, how is it that we can support the connections that we're looking for? We'll introduce the panelists in just a minute, but we wanted to first start out with what is going to be the session and how we're doing it. We're going to be starting off with a video from some leadership from the EO for Health initiative. We're going to be having remarks from the panelists and then a short discussion so they can react to what each other said. And then it's going to be the chance for you all to provide some input. And so we do have Mentimeter set up. And so there's going to be a series of questions where we're going to look for you all to add comments and react to it. And then the panelists will reflect on your input. And then we'll wrap it up with some closing remarks. A big thing we're trying to do is walk away with some really tangible, concrete steps that we can be taking that can support the connections within the GEO Work Program elements. And that's actually what Rui and the GEO Secretariat team are going to be reporting out later this afternoon. So we want to have the best comments because we want to win. And so you can see Katie Matthews is a co-moderator. Her voice isn't feeling so good, and so that she is in the room and she's going to be sort of adding in and listening in on items and for key takeaways, but she's just not going to be up on stage today. But Katie, thank you for everything that you've done to help prepare for today's session. So in terms of One Health, you can read it up there. The One Health concept is really trying to see how do we provide this framework that recognizes the connections between the environment, ecosystems, animals, humans, and the health and how those are connected and all. And the fact that this connection is really critical to the viability of our societies. And really, as it says, the habitability on our planet. It certainly is connected to many other items. So it's One Health is one of the 6 focus areas, but there are connections amongst all of them. And really One Health touches on all the other 5 as well. And that's one of the things we're trying to focus on today, is to try and tease out what are some of those connections. What are ways that One Health connects to the other focus areas, or One Health and the different initiatives and the communities of practice, how can they work with these other elements of the GEO Work Program, and vice versa? How can those other elements within the GEO Work Program find opportunities to work with One Health and all that? So that's exactly those connections in both directions that we're looking to explore today. And part of this is really helping to sort of see, how does this help us think about the GEO Work Program? And then what can that do to help all of us in the proposal writing that's going to be happening over the next 5 weeks or so. So you can be listening for that, and I share that with the panelists as well. You all can be looking for that. We do have an amazing panel, and so you can see them on stage and you can match them up. So Paris Cantos from EuroGeo, and also DRR. Yep. Swatine Behera from DIAS, Natalie from Blue Planet and AquaWatch, Alice Hughes from GeoBon and AP-Bon, Chao Ren from the Global Heat Health Information Network, as well as WMO Studies, and then Yifang Bang, who we met almost 30 years ago, so it's always great to see her at GEO events. She is with GeoHealth, as well as other aspects, including the Cloud Credit Program. So it is a wonderful panel. We've had a few connections already. And so this is the order where they're going to be speaking in. But we're actually going to be starting with a video from Julie Tertrange from NOAA. And she is going to set the scene she is one of the leaders within the EO for Health initiative, and she's going to set the stage a little bit for health issues.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the One Health session. My name is Julie Turton. I'm the Climate and Health Program Director at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm also the One Health lead there. But in this context, I am honored to be co-chairing the GEO Health Group on Earth Observations, Health Community of Practice, and EO for Health initiative. I am pleased to do so along with my colleague, John Haynes from NASA. He is the program manager for the Health and Air Quality Program, and our esteemed colleague, Dr. Helena Chapman, our executive secretariat, who keeps us all on track. We are all sorry we cannot be with you in person today, but we are thrilled that you're having a conversation about One Health. Our community of practice has been around since 2005, and we've had a One Health focus since inception. So it's really exciting that the GEO Secretariat and the work program is making One Health a priority. And we are excited to see how the conversation goes today and how we can work forward, how we can work better moving forward in this priority area. Our community practice main goal is basically using Earth observations to improve health decision-making. That's satellite and in situ observations. We have 5 working groups: heat, infectious disease, air quality, food systems and nutrition, and healthcare infrastructure, and a burgeoning one on animal health. And we have regular meetings, and at the end, I'll give you a QR code. If you haven't joined our community practice, please do so. And again, we are a combination of scientists, government organizations, observers, practitioners, at all kinds of national and regional and local levels. So please join us if you are interested in the health work. All right, so my job today is to tell you a little bit about what One Health is and just a little bit about our community practice and what we're doing. So One Health is a collaborative, multi-sector, transdisciplinary approach working at local, regional, national, and global levels with the goal of achieving optimal health outcomes, recognizing the interconnection between people, animals, planet, and their shared environment. And that's the real key. It's that interconnection. So this is the definition from the Centers for Disease Control, but 4 international UN organizations have also come together to be the quadripartite organizations and developed a joint One Health plan. That's the World Health Organization, the United Nations Environment Program, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Animal Health Organization. So they have also come together to say this is actually a really important construct. It's about healthy ecosystems, healthy people, healthy animals. It's looking at different sectors and disciplines and different levels of society. And that's basically the tenet of One Health. It's interconnectedness, how one affects the other, and how we have to work at both different levels and different scales and different disciplines to achieve optimal health for all. Simple, right? We already know that there are stressors in our environment. We're seeing more and more changes and extreme weather and droughts and extended droughts and floods and repeated floods and hurricanes and cyclones. We already know that some of these things can also lead to mental health issues for humans. Obviously, we don't know about mental health of animals, but those are everything from repeated disasters to losing your homeland or having to move. So there is a cascading impact in addition to the direct impact of, say, heat, for instance. So we look at it permeating through society. And that is also part of this One Health approach. I want to also mention that you'll hear a little bit more about this. I want to remind us that the water runs throughout both on land and in coastal systems. So there is a common thread about how we interact with the water, whether it's too much or too little of it, and the quality of it, and the availability for food and bathing and swimming and those sorts of things. Drinking, of course. And I also want to remind you, be remiss if I didn't, because I am from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration after all, that the benefits of the sea, from marine animals to seafood to seaweed and other benefits from the sea, even the recreational benefits and the health and well-being cannot be overlooked in a One Health context. So I'm switching a little bit to heat because I want to give you a bit of an update that we are working with and supporting the Secretariat and the Global Heat Resilience Service. It's been based in part on some of the work in our community of practice and one of those technical teams I mentioned on heat. We've been working on mapping urban heat environments in other parts of the Secretariat is pulling in other parts that are working on the solution space and other things. So we're really excited to have the Global Heat Resilience Service be a priority for the Secretariat. And Martin Clark, I believe, is there in person and can also answer any questions you have about that. We and the community practice are doing research on vector-borne, water-related, air quality, and other environmental hazards. And a lot, you'll hear more on some vector-borne disease from one of the community of practice members and also the European community there on vector-borne disease. But we have a lot of work going on dengue and malaria throughout the world. And you'll hear a little bit more about water-related disease and air quality and heat today. So all of these are in our portfolio already, and we'd love to be expanding on those in this new One Health world that we're living in with GEO. I will put one last thing up here that we have really we've enjoyed our engagement with youth, but have not done as much of it as we would like to do. So we know that's a priority for the Secretariat. It's a priority for us too. So if you're interested in youth engagement, please definitely let us know. And I guess with that, I will just say we work very actively to engage our public health practitioners, ministers of health, medical students, public health facilities, caregivers, care providers, and we'll continue to do so. So that is a big part of what our community practice is focused on as well. And with that, I know we're trying to stay on time here, so I just wanted to give the QR code and say thank you so much for your time, for being in session today. You are in very good hands with Katie Matthews and Lawrence Friedel. Katie's from NOAA, Lawrence is from NASA, and although we can't be there with you in person, I'm sure they will lead you in a very robust conversation. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Julie. If you are interested, after the QR code is there, if you are interested, please see one of us and we can certainly connect you up. If you're interested in joining the initiative or joining the community of practice, it is a great group. So I really encourage you, if you are interested, I encourage you to do that. Excuse me. We're now going to move into the panelist remarks, and we're going to the order in which they're seated. I gave very, very short introductions earlier just to save time. These are fantastic people. I really hope at the break today that you'll go up and introduce yourself to them, and they can give you a much more full background and what they're doing, not only the GEO work program activities that they're involved in, but also the other things that they're doing. And so really encourage you to take the opportunity today or this week to meet all the people on the panel. With that, we are going to be going to the first speaker is Harris. We're looking at these we asked them to prepare about 4 minutes on these two questions. And it's really this two-way connection between their GEO work program activity and One Health, or how One Health can work with them. So.
Thank you, Lawrence. 4 minutes, rather challenging. Okay, I will try to be very brief. I'm coming from Greece, belong to the National Observatory of Athens. As you know, European countries and European institutions have a long-standing involvement in GEO, and specifically in the last years into the EuroGEO initiative. EuroGEO initiative, I'm sure you know, it is built around the work of the EuroGEO action groups. And today I'm very briefly referring to the EuroGEO action group of disaster resilience and health that I serve as coordinator. And in the framework of, in the context of this presentation, I'm going to give you, a very brief overview of one of the flagship services of the EuroGEO action group of disaster and health, which is the systematic surveillance and early warning of vector-borne diseases across large territories. Now, coming to the first question, how our activity is supporting One Health. And if it is supporting One Health, I have to say that I do believe that yes, we can provide some support, or we do provide some support, especially because the activity into this action group is bringing together stakeholders and actors from across different sectors and continents, sectors relating to the One Health, such as health, disaster and climate, insurance sector, agriculture, food and pharmaceutical industry. And all in all, what we are developing in this action group is services, higher level services of TRL level of 6. Several of them are at the level of 9. So they are fully operational services which are providing support to policymakers and driving policies not only in the European Union territories, but beyond also. Addressing priorities in countries like Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And the members of the group, they are keen in attracting funding from private sector and the European Commission for sustaining their activities and for developing innovation in the domain that it is providing support to policymakers in the health sector and One Health sector. Actually, a significant amount of the resources that we are receiving through competitive, of course, money that we get is for building data sets. Data sets in the domain of health are very important. When we started, we realized that there was a big scarcity in terms of data and fragmentation data. There were silos of data. They were not available in a standard format that it can be used by other scientists. They could not be used for developing models that have the similar standard in terms of accuracy, and of course, models that can be transferable from area to area. So one important aspect that we are developing in the action group is to create data, curate data, and open the data for the benefit of the innovators and the scientists. And of course, the action group is engaging a large artificial intelligence community. Today, of course, artificial intelligence, we are in the era of the big data, is something that is a tool, but it is supporting a lot our actions. But of course, without forgetting that the domain expertise is part of our activity, so that the data is transformed to information and information to wisdom for the support of the policymakers in the health sector. Having said that, I'm just passing very fast, in a very quick manner, with only one slide on one of the flagship services that is the early warning system for mosquito-borne diseases. This is an early warning system that has received the first European Innovation Council award. It was indeed, something that was very much appreciated by the Innovation Council. It is a European collaboration action. It is today providing continuously during the mosquito period on a systematic basis every 2 weeks or 1 month time, validated assessments on the expected entomological and epidemiological risks at the very local level, at the level of the single village, up to the level of the region or the continent. And this is today provided in more than 11 regions in Europe, 4 countries in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America. But of course, I could elaborate more if you are interested. And now, coming back to the second question, if One Health can support the GEO work program, I say that yes. I say yes because the One Health approach, actually, it's an integrated approach that it's very much needing this interdisciplinary setting of collaboration, which is established in GEO. At the same time, One Health is driving policies that can support the development of research, innovation, and services in the domain. So, what is actually the post-2025 GEO work program is looking for. One Health is recognizing the amplification of diseases which are relating to the environmental changes and climate change. And as such, the the GEO work program, that it is putting a lot on emphasis on the climate change. I mean, it's something that it is very much, I mean, in the end, I mean, it is receiving support by the One Health prioritization. And I think that is on my side. And of course, I do believe that One Health asks, and we have to obey into that, that we have to build a consistent and reliable work program for GEO, so as to demonstrate convincing exams and success stories to the users, because in the end, the users are the ones that will sustain all our activity in GEO. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Swadhin Behra from Jamstack, representing DIAS here. I will talk about human aspect of the One Health. As Haris was saying, we have infectious diseases, vector-borne infectious diseases that affect our human society. I was reading the WHO report for 2022, and in that it is mentioned that malaria itself is causing, like there are reports of 250 million, 250 million people affected by malaria, reported cases. And out of that, I think close to 500,000 or 600,000 people died in 2022, and it's happening probably every year. And 95% of those cases are from Africa. So that's why, and we know that malaria could be related to climate. That's why we're interested in developing this early warning system for Southern Africa. And as a target region, we choose Limpopo, which is malaria endemic in South Africa. And using that as a pilot study, we try to develop early warning system for them. And this project called Infectious Disease Early Warning System, IDUS, was done by Jamstack, my center, together with Nagasaki, because on Jamstack side, we do most of the climate modeling and climate dynamics. On the Nagasaki side, and they have been working on vector-borne diseases. And together we try to develop this early warning system together with several centers in South Africa, including their Medical Research Council, Weather Service, Department of Health, and other things. And this project was supported by JICA, the Overseas Development Agency of Japan, and AMED, the Medical Research Council of Japan, together with the National Research Foundation, NRF of South Africa. So those fundings were useful for us to develop this project. The idea was like to combine and the traditional approaches we do by linking climate with malaria, and then adding on top of that the data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning technique, so that we can have a better understanding of how climate affects malaria in those regions and develop the prediction system so that we can develop the early warning system. And the results were remarkable. We found several climate modes, climate variation modes, like the La Nina, which happens in the Eastern Pacific, and the Indian Ocean dipole in the Indian Ocean and Indian Ocean subtropical dipole are strongly linked with the malaria outbreaks in Limpopo, and of course, some neighboring countries. And based on that, that was very good because we know that these climate drivers, they are easier to predict compared to malaria. So that's why I used the climate prediction-based prediction system to predict malaria. That's one thing. The other thing is, most important thing I think is how the cross-border migrations that affect the malaria cases locally. And that's most challenging one because of the porous border. It's not so easy to get on-time migration data. So what we did, we implicitly used the climate teleconnections to neighboring regions, neighboring countries, and implement that in the model so that the model was able to predict malaria cases locally. And the predictions were very successful and is used by Malaria Control Center there. They have been using it for various mitigation measures, how to cycle the sprays and whether to repeat the sprays or not repeat the sprays. And that's how they have now confidence in our system, because we have been doing that for the last 10 years. And every year they see that the predictions are coming accurate. And the health officials there, they also started understanding the factors that are affecting the malaria cases there. So they have now also more confidence on our system. And that's how we build the confidence together to develop this early warning system. The next phase, I think, is to spread this. We have an IDUS bureau there involving the Department of Health and also Weather Service. We want to spread that to other regions, other countries in Southern Africa. And hopefully with more funding, we'll be able to do that. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Ooh, sorry about that. Hi, folks. It's me, Natalie. I am with Geo Blue Planet, but I am also the flag bearer for Aqua Watch here at the Geo Symposium. And so I think the first question was, how does Geo Blue Planet support One Health? And I would say that, the ocean health is a pillar of human health. And so there are many thematic actions within Geo Blue Planet in our working groups. But pollution is particularly salient in the context of health. And to the right, you can see some of these areas. So oil spills, marine plastics, and nutrient pollution. And so if we think about the impact of ocean pollution on organisms and ecosystems, we can see toxicity, so those chemical constituents of oil and their impact on organisms and how that could be poisonous. Habitat loss, how oil can deposit and coat oyster reefs, plants, and other surfaces. And then entanglement in plastic and fishing gear. And then also too, oxygen depletion. I think this is really important for the eutrophication. And so this can create dead zones. So what does this mean for human health? Well, food security is threatened, particularly for those who are reliant on seafood. And so when we create these dead zones, we are also reducing the fish populations in those areas. It can also impact food quality and safety. So as these chemicals bioaccumulate in those fish muscle tissues, that can be consumed by folks, and they are, or in some cases, carcinogenic. But this can also be just an exposure issue. So folks who use water sources for recreational activities, they can contract gastrointestinal illnesses, bacterial or viral infections. And then in the case of eutrophic waters, harmful algal blooms can also produce aerosolized toxins, which can contribute to dementia. So this is some work that's not really done by Geo Blue Planet, but it is also really important work that connects water to human health. And so the University of Florida and Maryland, NASA and GeoHealth have already invested in this activity. You can contact the principal investigators of this work, but really it's just connecting water and other climatic factors with cholera risk and forecasting. So I think the last question that they asked was, how can our GeoHealth support the GeoWork program? And so specifically for Blue Planet, there are a lot of natural effects from our perspectives, like cyclones and hurricanes. But there are also human activities that contribute to the ocean health side. And so those are agricultural practices, industrial emissions, wastewater discharge, and discarded fishing gear and other plastics. And so, human health is a very important part of the storytelling. It's a strong motivator for policy. And so if we connect ocean health with human health, I think it can really support that catalyst for change in the ocean space.
Great, thank you so much.
Oh, by the way, you can go here if you want more information.
Thank you. So we're going to take a step from the ocean to the land, and I'll be talking about basically One Health, what it means from population to landscape scale. In the last few years, all of us have had our life touched by the COVID-19 pandemic. And actually, preventing the next pandemic isn't something that just involves controlling wildlife trade, which is one of the major conversations we've been having. It's something that inherently requires us to understand the intersection of species health, population health, and landscape health. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is how we actually intersect these different data to map what spillover risk looks like in space and time, giving us the ability to hopefully manage and mitigate that risk. So understanding spillover is still inherently challenging. And as I've noted, we cannot do this without interdisciplinary collaboration. We need the on-the-ground data of where species are. In the case of coronaviruses, beta coronaviruses like MERS, SARS, and SARS-CoV-2, these are carried by rhinolophid bats, which are bats that most people in this room probably couldn't recognize. Problem is, in an area like Asia, we've only described maybe 20 to 30% of species. Now, when the risk of interchange is going to increase with your number of species, we don't know how many species there are, we have a problem. So the first step of work like this is work on the ground to accurately delineate species. Following that, we can use predictive analysis to map out species. This requires us to understand not just what is going to impact on species distributions, but do we have it at a relevant scale? So then we can model out species distributions once we've identified them, and then we can start to think about other important questions. Spillover happens when we increase the interface between basically animals that are carrying a virus or any other form of pathogen and other species that are able to contract that virus. That means when wild species come in contact with livestock or domestic animals, we increase the interface that may lead to the spillover of any kind of zoonotic pathogen. When animals are stressed, just like when we are stressed, they are more likely to get sick. So understanding the impact of landscape degradation on species movements is also essential. But here again, we have a problem. For most species, including most species of bats, we do not have high-resolution data on how they're moving across landscapes. And so once again, we need to use another form of geospatial analysis. In the case of bats, we've been using isotopic mapping to map out the isoscape, hydrogen isotopes across the landscape, and cross-reference that with the isotopes in animals' fur. Again, this type of analysis is only possible by the combination of geospatial data, high-resolution analysis of those isotopes in their fur, and specific taxonomic data on those species. The next step of understanding that we need is to understand where in the landscape spillover might occur. Here again, we need the geospatial data, we need data on animal health, and we need data on identifying those species accurately. We also need information temporally. One of the only studies that have been done to look at the temporal risk of zoonotic spillover is in the case of Hendra in Australia. In that case, they found that the intersection of when we have drought and deforestation basically causes fruit bats to move into horse paddocks, and this is where we see spillover occurring. When we understand the distribution of these climate events and these human efforts in the environment, we can predict what risk looks like. In the context of Asia, we've been using predictive mapping to first map out the diversity of rhinolophids that carry beta coronaviruses, which requires a huge raft of different geospatial information. We intersect that with high-resolution land cover maps, again, something that we require that geospatial information for, so that we can map out fragments across the landscape and look where we have the interface between these areas used by species like bats and where they have the intersections between livestock and humans. And then we use a network-based approach to look at what risk looks like. So the map you see here, populations at risk of coronavirus spillover. However, many of these populations are going to be resistant. They will have been exposed to low levels of coronavirus in the landscape. So that what we then use is a network-based approach to where we see major population centers. And this is where we have the risk of the next potential epidemic. By using approaches like this that intersect species health, landscape health, and the distribution of humans, we can predict areas at risk over space and time. This means that we can say, look, during the breeding season, we should not be deforesting this area or disturbing this cave because you will massively increase the risk of spillover. It means that during periods of climate stress, we can try to avoid having other forms of stressor that will exponentially increase the risk of spillover. And it means we know where we need to intervene to try to make sure that those interactions between wild species and species that may provide reservoir hosts don't happen at the times of ecophysiological stress that spillover is most likely. And so what is most important from the landscape health perspective is having those collaborations, having the data sets we need to understand what risk looks like. Another key factor is the fact that we know in disturbed landscapes, we have wildlife communities that are generally more competent hosts. This is where we see spillover. By mapping these out accurately, by having the collaboration, we can hopefully help prevent the next pandemic. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My topics try to explain such kind of cross-disciplinary collaboration on urban heat health. I guess most participants here are scientists, so probably you are very familiar with IPCC report. From the IPCC, they call for such kind of real action at the city level. However, we are already through the GEOs, through this kind of global observation data set, this kind of global warming is well worldwide documented, but the real action at the city level is still very limited. So the first lesson I learned from the over nearly 20 years is kind of real applications and implementations. It's a partnership. I gave a name, which is the Three Musketeers. You need to have a collaboration with the policymakers, government officials, because they will tell you the political agenda, the planning implementations, and they probably also will tell you the guidelines, the code, etc. As a scientist, a scholar from the planning architecture faculty, we also need to conduct this kind of review to say what kind of guidelines or building code they need to be updated and what kind of scientific evidence we need to provide for those kind of updating work. And as academic researchers, I think the most important role for us is to provide this kind of scientific knowledge, understanding, judgment, and evaluation to support the policy makers and also the implementations. If you want to do the real action, you also need to work with the practitioners and professional people because they will let you know what is the practical issues and needs. And also very often, if you want to make a knowledge transfer, they will help you to develop this kind of design actions, define the threshold of guidelines, and also impact on the real practice. I know many scientists, when we prepare the journal papers report, in the discussion or conclusion, will say, okay, this is our findings, and potentially the end user will be used. But my experience can telling you, you need to, at the beginning, even before you submit your proposal, to identify this kind of partnership, understand their end users' need, then you can start prepare your proposal. So that is why you can, when you prepare the proposal, you know what kind of data you need to collect and try to provide this kind of tools or modeling simulations which can meet the end user's need and visualize this kind of evaluation instead of just give them the number. So my experience with the Red Cross, once we map out this kind of heat risk areas, they are very easily to conduct the community-based actions. And then as a planners and architects, we need to say how to implement this in the local planning system. So you need the practitioner to work with you. And nowadays, I think many sessions already discuss this kind of spatial scale. If you work on the climate, very often there are three major scales: meso scale, local scale, and micro scale. But if you talk about implementation, you also need to understand, for example, from planning perspective, we have this kind of regional or city cluster plan. They are corresponding to the meso scale, this kind of climate understanding or evaluation result. But when we talk about city mass plan, we have to downscale to the local scale. And then following this kind of district plan, the building design, they have different corresponding spatial scale in terms of climology. And this is one example from our Hong Kong's case. We got the very big funding from the government, and which is called Research Impact Fund. At the beginning, the government funding agency asked us to partner with the government officials, the different departments, and also the NGOs. So for example, the research step one, when we talk about climate data, we have to work with meteorological, this kind of bureau and administration in Hong Kong, which is Hong Kong Observatory, to understand their extreme hot weather warning system and what is kind of improvement for their weather services. And then for the built environment, we work with the planning authority, the building department, the planning department, and also environmental protection department. And then based on findings, we develop the guidelines, which they can be adopted directly in their practice. The last one, because we'll talk about the end user, i.e. the elderly people. So we work with like the hospital authority, Senior Citizen Home Safety Association, which is NGO, and also Hong Kong Red Cross. So based on findings, we can provide adaptation plan for supporting services and community heat resilience. So I would like to encourage everyone here, before you're submitting your proposal, identify your potential partners. That is extremely important to make such kind of vision to the real action. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So moving from heat to fire, I'm a contributor to GL Health initiative and also Resilient Cities working group. And we're also benefited from the cloud credit program set up by GL. So I will tell you about how do we use Earth observation and deep learning for wildfire pollution estimation and health impact assessment. We just started with the health impact assessment, so I'm going to show some potentials. As you all know, wildfires have increased in frequency, intensity, and duration. So here is an example of the fires pollution from the Canadian wildfires last year, 2023. 18 million hectares were burned, and over 100 million people were exposed to wildfire smokes. That's in the US, and plus 30 million people in Canada. So these were daily Sentinel-5P images and CO emission on a daily basis. And we also can have the monthly average. You can see this huge amount of emission. And also you can also have estimate pollution as well. This was from last year. I was really surprised to see over, a lot of places have over 40 days of wildfire smoke days, and especially a huge increase in 2023. And how about elsewhere in the world? And just to show in Europe, I was also surprised to see the Europeans, and especially the European citizens living in cities, even though with the EU standards, it's not over the limit, but over 90% of European urban population were exposed to the level of pollution that exceeding WHO levels. With the wildfire in Greece, let's say Athens this summer, then PM2.5 and the other pollution is much higher. So there's also a major health risk elsewhere. And so we can use Sentinel-5P and GSHSat and other satellite data, EO-based data for global scale pollution emission estimation, but they are at a lower accuracy. On the ground level, we have the point measurements. Currently working with leveraging deep learning to combine the two data sets to produce high resolution pollution and emission estimation. So here are just some examples of wildfire exposures and health impacts. So what you all know, respiratory illness, that's the number one. A lot of people, when there's fire smoke, hospital emergency visits have been increasing. And also to see so many cardiovascular health problems, cardiac arrest, and also increased risk to cancer. Not only, wildfires have, impact human health, and ecosystem health as well. These were, to the left was a burned forest. I did field work in Canada. So vegetation, this is a famous picture from the Australian wildfire, kangaroos, koala bears, were all, many died. And then farm animals and other, domestic animals, when you have evacuation, they're not really the highest priority. So we need to use vital data set from ground-based sensors to satellite UAVs and to leverage emerging technologies and deep learning models to provide better estimation and also to improve mitigation effects. For example, better fighter fighting priorities to protect human life and also critical ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yifan, could you go ahead one slide?
Yep.
So one of the things we want to do now, so first of all, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the individual perspectives and for keeping it brief. I know there's lots more to be said. We actually want to use the next 5 minutes or so to ask you all, what did you all hear from each other that might spark ideas or things that you saw connections? We talked about that in the early morning session today, and maybe some yesterday. What are some of those connections that you saw between you all?
Thank you. I was actually very much attracted by the speech talk of Alice about what actually the landscape changes have actually to do with the development of outbreaks of diseases and how much this has to be related to the assessment of risk. And also, I think Alice, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned about the need of data. The data you need that develop your models that they may provide some validated assessments. On my side, when we started with these early warning systems for vector-borne diseases, we realized that we were also missing data. And there were cases that data were okay there, available, systematically protected, but in very few countries. There were many other countries when we started going beyond Europe, in Africa or in Asia, that data were not at all there. So we would like to know how much we can transfer the models and what is the similarity of the landscape environment that could allow us migrating our models in other areas that data were not existing for training our. So what you are saying is very valid for us and for me actually, and I do see there a field of collaboration actually, because what you are doing and how you are actually approaching the way of risk assessment using the landscape information and the changes in the landscape information, it might be important information for us filling the gaps in the areas that data about mosquitoes or biological data are not existing.
Alice, what do you think? Is it a match?
So it's great to get these questions. We've worked with a lot of different geospatial data, and when we're looking at the diversity of insects in different regions across Asia, you always see that it's the mosquitoes being collected because of programs like the malarial programs. I think there is a lot of cross-learning to be had, and of course there are those blank spots in the map we can use modeling to fix a lot of them, and then we can use calibration data. And so I think the space for exchange so we can develop new best practice, because One Health is still an emerging field, and it is so important. And with increases in extreme events, it's going to become even more important. And so I think there's a huge amount that we can learn and grow and hopefully help take this field forwards under a GEO umbrella.
Other thoughts, connections?
Yeah, I would like to say I really like Charles' comments regarding partnerships. In our case, we need to collaborate with firefighting agencies as well as the medical communities in order to get data information. So partnerships is definitely very important to stress.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to say from our session, I think the every panel already show very useful this kind of information platform or visualize this kind of evaluation result. I think that is very critical and important step to have this kind of potential collaborations, no matter with scientists with a different this kind of discipline or background, or even with other, I mean, the industry people, the local people, NGOs, etc. I think that is very powerful and useful. Yeah.
You want to add anything? Natalie or Swaheen? Swatine, yep, or Natalie?
I was impressed about this spillover you talked about. And I think you are mentioning about the climate change as a stressing factor. But what you showed us, the localized effect of climate change. And in that sense, I feel we need a lot more collaboration between climate scientists and the terrestrial scientists, including the wildlife science. We heard about the wildlife fire and other things. And those usually are related to what we say the modes of climate variations, like the El Nino, the dipole, and monsoon. So we need to kind of include more of those year-to-year variations in climate on top of the climate change stress, what you are talking. And then I think we need more discussion on that, including data. Thank you.
Absolutely. And also the resolution that all these things are happening. So we know, for example, where we have climate microrefugio, which you've done a lot of modeling on, of course, it's going to buffer species resilience because they have a means of escaping from very high temperatures, though it depends on the drought situation. And so understanding that resolution and making sure we genuinely have the data on what animals are exposed to is also important in understanding where these risks lie.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot of, with disasters, oftentimes it's sort of the cascading effects. And so what are the stresses that are going to get created from some of those cascading effects, which will increase the risk? Swahid, I saw also connections sort of with Alice in terms of with climate, where might those risk factors be increasing and where biodiversity changes and all that, and also saw it with sort of wildfires and where wildfires might create additional stresses, whether it's in animals or ecosystems, that whether it leads to crossovers or other things. Not that One Health is certainly broader than that. And I think biodiversity is just, inherently connected into this in terms of understanding what those different stresses are and whether it is spillovers or other sorts of aspects of things. Biodiversity just seems to be this natural place where species and landscape sort of interact, so the connections there. So I'm not sure how much GeoBond and EO for Health are talking, but that's certainly a clear thing that I'm coming away already, and we've got half the session to go. Any final comments about what you heard from each other? Natalie, you want to add anything?
I think that Harris is probably the closest to GeoBlue Planet. I didn't speak on our activities or thematic actions in disasters, but we are definitely interested in those coastal and marine hazards. And I think that kind of was really interesting to hear your perspective.
So now it's your turn. So we're encourage you to get out your phones or devices if you have a camera, and you can go to that QR code. Oops. Can you actually go back to the, oh, is the QR code in here? So what we encourage you to do, we're gonna have a series of questions. And so we're gonna ask you all to input information, and then we'll sort of get the panelists to react, and then we'll go on to the next question. So if you haven't already, if you can go to this QR code and pull it up, and we're gonna have the first question. If anyone still needs more time, just raise your hand. I see some phones, so we'll give it another minute or so for people to get onto that QR code. Anyone need more time? Okay. Oh, can we go back? There was one person who still needed the QR code. There we go. All right. I think if you're in Mentimeter, you should have the first slide. So can you go to the next slide? Thank you, Tashara. So we're asking you the similar question we asked the panelists. For the activity, whether it's a GEO work program activity or something else you're involved in, how do you see the connection to One Health and what you've been doing and how you could support the One Health efforts? And so, Tashara, right now I see 0 responses. Is that okay? You can react relative to your own work program activity or just generally? And as you're entering it in, if you could add if you are involved with a GEO work program activity, if you can include in your response, either at the beginning or the end, what work program activity you are involved with, that would help.
Could we scroll down so we could see that one? I think it's kind of cut off just a bit. Okay.
Any reactions from the panel for I guess the 14 responses we have so far?
So I'm going to comment on the agri-food systems because what we see is the dominant driver of landscape degradation is, of course, agriculture. And so moving forwards, if we want to reduce the chances of things like spillover risk, understanding how we manage environments and landscapes is critical. Also in the context of bat-borne pathogens, and just to put it in context for a minute, you guys all have pathetic immune systems. Sorry. Bats don't. So a 5-gram bat will live up to about 40 years in the wild, and they're able to carry all sorts of pathogens without any symptoms. That means that if we consume wildlife, we're at risk, but it also means when we increase this interface, we are also increasing the risk. And we know that they are particularly susceptible to pesticides. And so managing landscapes to try to reduce the exposure of these natural habitats to pesticides, as well as creating conduits so animals can move across these landscapes, is absolutely crucial in a One Health context. And we are still not having discussions about how we manage agri-systems and agri-food systems to try to reduce what those stresses look like. But it is an inherent part of the problem. We can't develop better solutions unless we understand how to manage these landscapes more effectively.
Thank you, Alice. Natalie?
Yeah, I would like to say that that one's also a really important one for us at GeoBlue Planet. We're working now with UNEP on this global partnership for nutrient management, and one of the big sources of nutrient pollution is the agriculture sector. And so I think when we talk about ocean health, coastal health, and even inland waterways and their health, a lot of them are impaired by agricultural practices. And so this all has a connection. I know that it's difficult to balance food security with these with ocean health, but it is also important because we talk about the consumption of these foods and what that means for those communities as far as food security goes for protein sources, but also to just because of the impact that harmful algal blooms could have on these communities as well. I think that this is some connection that we have with One Health. And while GeoBlue Planet doesn't have quite as an established connection with you folks, I think this is where we're wanting to continue conversations.
Great, thank you. Cha Ren, and then we'll go to Harris.
Yeah, can you scroll up a little bit? I want to try to respond to the better urban mapping. Yeah, urban heat mapping. Can you go down a little bit? One more, yeah. Okay. Yeah, here maybe one audience suggests we have this kind of better urban mapping, especially for heat maps. I think if you want to take a real action at a city level or community level, you also need to understand what is kind of the health data situation, and also like the social demographic, this kind of data. For example, in Hong Kong, all this kind of data collect at the territorial planning unit. In Hong Kong, we have over 200 such kind of units. So different cities, they have this kind of data collection system according to the local census survey situations. And also potential, you also need to link with the local, this kind of policy making action systems. So that the council member can they really active at this kind of TPU level, or they represent the council, this kind of spatial unit. So you need to understand this and then decided the resolution of your urban heat risk map accordingly. So that is why I cannot say the high resolution will be the best one, because potentially you need to understand what is the opportunity for this kind of implementation and real action, which is you need to understand your local context and system.
Audience, you're doing fantastic. We're just on the first question. Look at all the different reactions. I know Harris and Yingfang wanted to comment, and all right as well. And then we are going to get to the other questions too. But you've sparked something great. So nice job, audience.
As I can see, I mean, I see a lot of responses relating to the modeling and systems for early warning, for disaster mitigation, etc. That is, of course, very encouraging, and of course, all of this is linked to the One Health. I mean, what I would like to comment on that is that all of us that we are working in that domain, we have to be very careful on what is the scale of the models and the data and how much validated all this is in when we make an assessment, because okay, the assessment is very important, of course, but it has to be at a very local scale if we want to be, to provide real help to the citizen and to the authority. And in that perspective, when we want to be at that level, we have to have accurate data. I saw someone saying there that they are providing high-scale meteorological and climatological data. This is very important. And if we are able doing that at that level and at that scale, then of course we have to start informing people, training citizens how to behave. And I think this is very important because health, and when we speak about health of people, animals, and ecosystem, we have to have at local level very validated information. That is, I mean, a comment on what I see there. So we have to be very, very careful on what we are developing and how much validated it is at that level.
So can I just make
a question on that? Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned the importance of scale and quality of data, and I think this is a really important point to bring home because, of course, we want the highest resolution that is reliable. One issue we see in the ecological space is many of those on the ground do not understand the limits of sensible application of data. And so they use the data beyond the sensible limits, and then they will build error on top of error. Having a dialogue so we build better data standards and we better curate the metadata to ensure it is used sensibly and reliably is also really important, because this community is generating more and more reliable products. But unless people understand how to use them accurately, then they get misused. And I think this is another space where we need to have a dialogue on what those sensible limits of application are.
Is that another opportunity for groups within GEO, especially the GEO work program activities, to sort of co-convene activities and have those conversations as a way to help that information flow?
Absolutely. I think that is the only way we advance data standards and better, more efficient and effective collaborations.
I know you want to respond, but we can do that at the coffee break. Let's hope we're going to Yingfang and then, yep.
I fully support that. I would like to comment on better, it's actually right there, better wildfire mapping, detection, and prediction. So not only detection, early detection, near real-time monitoring, and also being able to predict that can provide early warning, and then have a better protect people and ecosystems. That's very important. And this is not only just on disaster reduction and also related to other GEO initiatives and programs. I think there are quite a lot of collaboration and partnership need to be built.
So I think in several responses, one common word came out is a transdisciplinary approach. I totally agree with that. I think both Harris and Alice also mentioned about that. So the data we are getting from different disciplines are different. So it's very difficult for us to work from one discipline with another discipline data. So it's very important to have the data catalogs and also metadata to understand each other well and also establish some standard, as Alice was mentioning. And also we should have some common workshops and maybe symposium to understand each other and also exchange ideas and also understand each other. I think that's very important for us. Thank you.
Great. That's fantastic. I agree. Instead of a general workshop, maybe by the end of the session, we can identify, hey, GEO, this is one specific workshop or 2 or 3 specific workshops that we think need to get held in the next 6 months or something like that. So I'd love to get to push us to try and get specific in terms of, there's lots of workshops that could be held. Here's some specific ones that we really recommend out of this panel, especially when it comes to One Health. I'm thinking about it relative to the GEO work program. There's a lot of comments in here that sort of show that sort of connections. And I know one of the things we're trying to do is support those people then the GEO work program activities that are going to be writing a proposal over the next 5 weeks and looking for ways to connect up across the focus areas. And so while your work program activity might relate to one work program, one focus area like agriculture or water or something like that, we're wanting to use this session to sort of see where could you include in your proposal, hey, here's a linkage to One Health, and we specifically want to co-convene something with them. And so I think the comment in the lower left right now, I think that, where it says, I think that One Health can help make connections because activities don't always see themselves as health. That's exactly what this session is about. How can we help you all see that there may be a connection to One Health? And in your proposal, write in there that we want to have a joint workshop with One Health to better understand this. So that's one thing. There was a comment on the right. It says develop risk assessment case studies. Since this question is what have you been doing or could potentially do, that's fantastic. Whoever wrote that, fantastic. Please follow up with us later, because if you can help or have the developed risk assessment case studies connected into health, that's exactly what we'd like to see in the proposal for the next year work program. There was another comment about the resilient cities being a convener. How can you co-convene with One Health? And then not this session's about One Health, but really how could you co-convene with some of the other focus areas as well? And that's exactly what we're trying to explore. So let's move on to question 2. And so this is the other way. If you think about your work program activity, now that there might be a connection to One Health, what can we share with EO for Health or the health community of practice about how what they're doing in One Health can help you with your geo work program activity? So encourage you to go to Mentimeter and add that in. And as you all are looking at it, you all can both respond to what's up there, but you can also add in your further thoughts about how One Health can help you.
One Health can help us not have more epidemics and pandemics. Yeah. I think this is an area that governments need to also be aware of the need for further investment on, because it's an area of research. Everyone's heard of One Health now. Everyone has their own interpretations of One Health. But the programs we need in order to protect us on the landscape scale are not really being done. And I think this is a good space for conversations on that, because we need the collaboration to do it well.
Yeah, can I also respond to this? I think One Health may not really in the political agenda, because if you refer to this kind of local climate change action report, very often they say we want to do something to protect the animals' biodiversity, but they only focus on biodiversity, right? And then the flooding, the heat wave, landslide, everything is like a individual single items, but under such kind of climate change action umbrella, actually everything relevant to the One Health. So if we want to make such kind of One Health relevant to the policy making or implementation, we have to let the policy makers understand that everything is relevant to this, and they need to adopt this in the climate change action plan, right? So that is my suggestion.
Yeah, I would also like to say it's really important to bring people together. Now in the panel, we talk about health. We don't have anyone coming from medical community or the health professionals. So we need to bring more stakeholders together to collaborate. And also we want to, One Health can support geo work programs in terms of, the post-2025 agenda, Earth intelligence by providing health intelligence.
Yeah, Natalie, and then Harris, did you? Yeah, Natalie?
Yeah, I think that also One Health is really great, because I think when people think about health, they tend to focus on human health. And so when we think about human health, a lot of times it seems that we're looking more from a symptom-based approach. So folks might have these epidemics or pandemics, and so we deal with that symptom, but the actual cause is, those land degradation activities, or it could be, in the case of GeoBlue Planet, what's happening in the water quality. And so I think it's really important for us to, I guess, use this visibility that health has to, motivate action in some of these other areas.
So just touching on that, China has a term called ecological security. And I really like that term because it underscores the fact that a healthy environment is essential for healthy human life, and it does provide that basic safety net. So I think promoting the concept of ecological security, which brings us the One Health umbrella, but it also highlights the importance of why we need this form of analysis to protect all of society and all of life.
And also maybe One Health covers too many things, like the SDG, and probably under such kind of big topic, we need to identify clearly what is focus area, what is our priority, and different cities or regions, they have their own issues or own context, and then we can identify, say, how this kind of One Health can support the local, this kind of activities or actions. Yeah.
What I would like to add, is whatever I see on the screen, I think is very valid, and it's actually needed. If we want to be provide support to One Health, but if we want to know what One Health can provide the support to the GeoWork program. I would say that the principle and the priority is that the policy-driven and the decision-making that it is supposed to, provided as a support by the One Health, because if we are able to support policies and One Health drives policies into, a concept, then I think we will be capable in providing or in, let's say, developing sustainable actions program.
I think one of the central point is data here. So that's also important for us. How One Health and Geo will work together to develop specific data sets which are not available to public, which is not easily accessible to scientists like us. And also there will be question of how we exchange the data, how we share the data, and the source of how do we manage different source of data interoperability, and those kind of things we need to discuss, I think, together.
Okay, I'm going to push you a little bit. These are generic. A lot of them are sort of general data, really general. Is there a specific data set that you would like from the One Health community that if they could help organize and help validate and get validated and calibrated, that doesn't exist right now, or what? Or is there an existing data set that you know your community needs or your work program activity needs that you don't currently have right now?
So from the work I do, one of the things we really need is better maps of landscape degradation in a meaningful way. And so there's been more and more work on using hyperspectral imagery to look at, say, forest health. We don't have parallels for a lot of other ecosystems. And the reason this is important from a health perspective is we know degraded ecosystems are great for generalist species, and in most cases, generalist species are the most competent host for zoonoses. And so getting better indices of landscape degradation for a variety of habitats is crucially necessary to enable better mapping, because we now have better fragmentation maps, but we still don't have maps of degradation for a lot of environments, and that does inhibit our ability to do this kind of modeling.
I fully recognize, first of all, audience, thank you for all of these inputs, 50 responses, that's fantastic. And I realize the way Mentimeter is set up on this question prompts really short responses. And so I fully recognize that I'm making a comment, and the way Mentimeter is set up, you kind of have to ask or have to answer in a general standpoint. We would ask you all to be thinking about, if you put in any one of these things, what's the next step or 2 or 3 that could get something that's much more concrete, because that's the sort of thing that we want to be able to bring back to Julie and to John and Helena as they're leading the EO for Health activities, because they're going to have to write their proposal to the GeoWork program. We want to let them know what they need to be putting into their proposal, and your help in to get more specific is going to help them. But we have a few more comments first.
Actually, I would like to say, apart from this kind of geodata, very critical data, sometimes so difficult to get is public health data. And for some country or some cities, only the doctor, they can access this kind of data. So that is why if we have done some dengue analysis, prevention, but the next step is this kind of potential health impact evaluation, right? But if you don't have any public health data, how you do that, and how you achieve such kind of so-called One Health result. So that is why I think for me, if I want to achieve such kind of goal called One Health, the public health data should be open and accessible to everyone.
And some people in the health community have sort of worked through that with Earth observations, but I guess one way that they could support is to help understand how to navigate that space. Got a few, Natalie and then Harris.
I just want to comment. I think that's a really good point. I think it's really difficult too for us to make those strong connections to the human health perspective. And then also delineating how our specific area is contributing to that human health. I think having that information also, I think earlier today, someone spoke about mobile data and how that can also help us learn a little bit more about where their exposure may be occurring, can really help us get more information about making that stronger connection.
All right, we're going to take one more comment here from Harris. or you can go Yufeng, which,
I would like to add one more
Great.
comment
Okay.
about the data. I mean, especially the question that was about, I mean, what type of data we need and what could be eventually some complementary action of all of us, I mean, into building data. Because, I mean, when I mentioned before that when we started studying the vector-borne diseases in Europe, that was an easy, not an easy task, but anyway, we could build models, I mean, that could provide some validated assessment of the risk, either being, I mean, human cases or domological risks. But when we moved to Africa and or to Asia, then we realized that we had no data at all, and they were not, it was not able to train our models, and it was not able actually to provide something validated. Then, in this case, what we try to do is to find similarities in the landscape. This is what I mentioned before. So it's not only one type of data, it's many different types of data. It's not just health data or entomological data, but it's also biodiversity data, landscape data, and all the changes that have been, I mean, imposed because, I mean, of the changes of the environment, the changes of the climate, and all this has to be, I mean, in the very best resolution. And of course, if we find similarities from one place to the other, then we would, of course, complement, I mean, what is missing. But then for that, we have to build data. So that is my reply to what you
Yingfeng, it can be
Very
really
quick.
really
Very-
quick.
Extremely short. I agree, public health data is really important, and also good spatial coverage of pollution data.
So we have another set. So we have a couple more questions. What we're going to do is we're going to take these. So there's three instead of, so we're going to get inputs on this. And so we have a set of three questions. So this one, so to you all in the audience, jump on Mentimeter. And so we're looking at this one of the aspects of GeoHealth or EO for Health in terms of that and activity. One of the things they're looking at is being a convener. In addition to being on the R2O track, they're looking at being a convener within the new work program. And if they can be a convener, what would you see success? You know, so if they were a convener, what would you consider success in that mind, if they were to take on that role? Or if they were to be successful in that role as a convener, what does that mean to you? Let's let a few responses come in, and then, then you all can.
I don't want to influence anyone.
Right. So thank you. Keep the items coming in. Last time we got up to 50, so keep them coming in. We are going to start our a quick response, and then we'll probably move to another question. So we're going to take two comments on now, and then we'll go to the next question, and then we'll get comments about all three. So yes.
Okay, so I think my response is already there in audience responses. I think we should take a few case studies and stakeholder engagement, how the program is helping some stakeholders, how they're getting the data, how the data is treated, because health data usually contains personal data. So when you are sharing the public data, public health data, you should be careful not to share the personal data. So how the data is managed, those kind of things, and I think will be helpful to a success.
Okay, we're going to go to Alice.
So to be super ambitious, the Kunming to Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework does not have any target on One Health. It only has an annex on One Health. If we really wanted to have an influence, I would want to see targets on One Health, and I would want to see indicators on One Health that include that geospatial information so we understand how to manage landscapes.
This kind of thing can only come about through collaboration, but it also involves policy engagement to make sure that policymakers understand the inherent importance of One Health.
I love the specificity. Rui, did you get that? Okay, we're gonna have to make sure Rui gets that afterwards. So Rui, we're coming to you for a specific item as a report out. I love that. Can you remember that, Alice? And then, okay, you find, are we all gonna take this and we're getting to the next question?
Yeah, I would say be the knowledge hub for data, tools, and use cases.
So this is great. We're gonna move the next, hold on one second before we know. Someone wrote in there, improvement of standards. Improvement of standard. Whoever wrote that, fantastic, thank you. Can you be thinking and then come down here after the session? Is there one particular standard that you're thinking of? Because that's something that we can bring back to the EO for Health team to say, hey, this is one standard that the community is saying needs improvement. So I agree that there's a general comment, but if we can get specific and you can help us identify one that you know needs improving, that would really help us out. All right, let's go to the next question. All right, so we've been at this for about an hour and a half. We're wanting to see what your key takeaways are at this point. Let's come to you too, panel. But we're gonna get some responses from the audience first.
I'm going to give my takeaway whilst people are filling in comments. My takeaway is that there's a tremendous amount of work being done already, but we need to be promoting that dialogue and actually cross-referencing what's being done so that we don't duplicate efforts and we can build on synergies and really do the best with this information to ask the right questions and to make sure that the answers go where they're needed to have an impact.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted only to say that I fully agree. I think what to take away is that we need to have a better collaboration. We have to know each other. We have to know exactly what we are doing and what we miss. We have to know our communities, the stakeholder community, the users. What are the policies we're trying to address? And if possible, to find collaboration in a way that we are complementing one another. Scientifically speaking, but also, in terms of policy making, support of not policies, but we are supporting policies. So I think it's the main takeaway message.
Yeah, for One Health to be successful, I think it's already highlighted here, collaboration. I would say interdisciplinary cross-sector collaboration.
Is there a particular sector or discipline that you particularly think is not being served in the work that you're doing? Like that's a general term. What's the specific discipline?
Public health. This is difficult. They don't have time. I've reached out. I think it's not easy to get data and also establish good collaborations. So I have to go through personal channels. Fortunately, I'm married to a doctor, so it was easier.
So are you saying that one thing that the EO for Health can do is to help connect the public health community more to what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I also echo the public health related collaboration? I'm not sure how many participants have this kind of working experience with public health researchers, or you read this kind of serious public health papers. To be honest, I think most of the time they adopt the statistical model, try to tell you when temperature increase by 1 degree, how many people will die. But fundamentally, now GEO provides this kind of high resolution, high spatial resolution data. but not many, to be honest, not many public health researchers use this kind of data. Very often they treat entire city as one, so they only select one station, this kind of weather record, to estimate the consequence of public health result. So that is why when we work with Hong Kong public health researchers, the step one is to educate them the urban climate, this kind of knowledge. Within the urban, there are intra variation in terms of climate conditions. So that is why I think we need to step out our comfort zone and work with others and understand each other. Because we have different education background, research experience, the language we use are very different, but we have to try to understand each other and work together.
Allison, and then Harris.
So when you said, I'm lucky my husband is a doctor, it actually gave me the idea of matchmaking. And then I thought, there's a potential there. By hosting frontier webinars on big questions where you need research partners, we have the opportunity to help people bridge those connections when they have specific data needs and they need to find those partners. And I think GEO would be well posed to help bridge those gaps by literally research matchmaking.
Harris?
Okay, I want to touch on one point. It's a thought that I had during the coffee break. I was discussing with some GRSS colleagues. I mean, when we say about One Health, did we ever try to see if we have enough knowledge about what One Health approach is? I mean, all of us working in the geospatial domain, in the artificial intelligence building models, it's a very multidisciplinary. I mean, it's an integration of many disciplines. Okay? And I was wondering if we'll have to build knowledge about One Health and even more create curriculum in the One Health approach or concept. That was a point that maybe the future work program of GEO could address to some extent.
Okay. Thank you. Natalie?
I'll be quick, guys. I like Alice's analogy, I suppose, of a Match.com with One Health. Yeah, I do think that collaboration is the big thing here. I think that that's what GeoBlue Planet has hoped with One Health as well. And for us, I think that, I'm going to keep referencing it, folks, because I want it in y'all's ear. This global partnership on nutrient management is really important for us. And I think the whole objective with that is a source to see approach, and source includes all of these different folks here in the panel. And One Health is like the most fantastic way to connect everyone.
Great. And let's go to Tushar, if we can go to the next question. So audience, thank you for your amazing input. We have one final question that we'd like your thoughts on. And so we've been talking about One Health, connections to the GEO Work Program activities. What is an important step? Really encouraging you to be specific. And so we recognize that collaboration is a key thing. We heard it in the last question. What's a specific step towards that collaboration? Or what are other things, and again, as specific as you could, would help? For once, when you look out in an audience, you want to see people looking down at their phones. That means they're on Mentimeter. let's start at the far end. We'll move this way. So Yifeng?
Okay, great, thank you. I would say the first step would be to bring the stakeholder together, especially the end user communities, for example, from global WHO, FAO, and also public health officials, and here an ecosystem, experts to hear what is really important from their perspective and what GL community can help, maybe bring diverse working groups within GL and listen and discuss and co-create.
Like what I mentioned in my earlier presentation, I think identify this kind of partnership is the first step. I would like to strongly recommend that again. Thank you.
So of course, as well as finding ways to forge those collaborations, we also need government and funder awareness. And there should be more funding programs that are specifically for interdisciplinary One Health to enable those collaborations to happen and provide the capacity and support for them.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that these folks have said. I think that once we have a stakeholder or user identified need, I think that we need to start having these active communications. But as Alice has also said, funding is a really important issue. You know, I think with collaborating, you need someone coordinating all of these different groups. So even if we can do our own work, we're still going to continue working in silos unless we have someone who's devoted to collaborating.
I think one thing came out very well is public health, and doing research, developing early warning system is one thing, and making medical practitioners use them is another thing. That's my experience. So I think One Health and Geo Health should engage both parties, the practitioner and the researchers, jointly in joint workshops, targeted workshops, so that we can understand each other well. And they will understand what we are doing, and we'll understand what is their need. And then we'll be able to make some proper matchmaking to evolve One Health to the next stage. Thank you.
Okay, I think that one of the first things that we have to do is to understand which are the policies that we have to address, and I mean, to the extent that we can provide support to these policies. And of course, then we need a better coordination. I mean, I may say, coordination action, so as to understand who we are out there, what we are doing, how important is what we are providing, and if it is missing things, data, capacity, skills, whatever, that can be borrowed by others. And that is, I think the importance of setting a good coordination action between us. And last but not least, of course, the stakeholder engagement and the academia engagement, because they have to share a lot. But of course, again, this is an action that it is given up to a coordination action. So, this is, I think, the main message that we have to take out. Thank you.
And I'll add, I think a next step that I might encourage EO for Health and the Health Community of Practice. They have a fantastic organizer. Helena Chapman is the executive secretary, and she's very, very active in terms of sharing information. But it sounds like you're encouraging them to do more. What I would like to do is encourage them to invite each of the GEO Work Program activities here to talk at some of their future meetings, if you all haven't been already, as well as maybe your next GEO Work Program, not your next one, but a future meeting of your GEO Work Program activity. Maybe you can invite someone from EO for Health to come and talk about what they're doing, and that can support a little bit of what you've been saying, but maybe that can be an item. We're going to be wrapping it up soon. I have a walk-on question that you all haven't had yet. It builds on a little bit of some of the comments that I've heard. Imagine that you're having a workshop with the Health Community of Practice and the EO for Health community. It's about your work activity and One Health and health issues. So if you were having that workshop, you're doing a planning for that workshop, what's an item, what's a topic that you specifically want to put on that agenda? And collaboration is not allowed. and coordination is not allowed. What's a specific item that you would like to address between your community and the One Health community, and you're going to be able to put on that workshop agenda?
I think several asked from the university. I think this kind of One Health education is also extremely important. Otherwise, in such kind of engagement or workshop, we have to educate them again, right? But if they already got this kind of training in the UG program, naturally they will have this kind of mindset, they have a thinking in their daily life or practice or jobs, right?
Yep, you find and then we'll come this way.
Yeah, maybe specifically, maybe pollution and health, what do you call it, vector-borne disease as a session, so that, often you have vector-borne disease, but this pollution and other related illness are not non-vector-borne. So some session on that and all the relevant goes there, and another would be disaster and health.
While we're doing it, Tashara, can you go back to the other slides? Yes, Alice?
So I think people often see biodiversity as a secondary priority, something that's nice to have, but not that important. I think we need to remind everyone that biodiversity is important, and we need to take a much more proactive rather than a reactive approach to prevent these problems from happening. And that means we need to fundamentally shift the way we look at the landscape in the importance of these types of collaboration and these types of data. And so I would be looking at changing those mindsets so that we reset our priorities and start hopefully trying to do things a little bit better.
I think I'll stress on data, what kind of data is available. So if you're holding a workshop, I want to stress on that. Both sides, health side and the climate or environment side, should also think what data is available to them, what data they can share, and then how they exchange data. Those kind of discussions should come up in such kind of workshops.
Okay, and usually, I mean, in the workshops, scientists, they take the floor and they say how well they are doing things and what they are missing. And if they had what they miss, they would be even much better. But I think, I mean, we have now, I mean, when we're speaking for real problems, and what I would like to see in such a workshop is to see real cases. I mean, to see best examples of services or applications or solutions that we have been providing to stakeholders, and at the same time having the stakeholder on the stage to provide the testimony of how good and how practical was that what we have provided to them and what they miss in terms of performing well into their daily practice, and what science could even more add into their daily practice. So I think this is a kind of workshop that for me.
Yeah, I have to agree with what Swadin said. I think that having a workshop on what data you folks have that we could borrow or that we could use so that we're not duplicating efforts. And then I think also too, you'll have y'all's expert network. We have our expert network, and just kind of leveraging that for our activities and things in our own interest as well as yours.
Great, thank you. So we're going to revisit where we started. This session was to really explore the connections of these GeoWork activities with One Health, and also give you a chance for you all to be thinking about your GeoWork program activity or activities and One Health, working out these both directions. And so I really think we touched on it. Thanks to all the comments here, and especially thanks to you all in the audience for all of your comments. Going forward, what we're doing is certainly we're going to be sharing the information that we've heard, whether it's what does successful convener mean to you all and to the panelists. Other thoughts on the connections between GeoWork program activities and all that. So we're going to be sharing that information back for the planning as well as for the strategic implementation plan activities. We're certainly going to be bringing information back to the health community of practice and the EO for Health, and what are some of the things that they can be doing in the convening role that they have, and encouraging them to essentially co-convene activities And it doesn't have to wait until the Geo Work Program, the next Geo Work Program comes out. They can start working with you all now in terms of starting looking to co-convene those items. And then what we really hope to do is maybe in the next 8 months or so that there are some cross Geo Work Program connections that we talk about in general. If we can get specific on it, then maybe those are some things that we could highlight at the Geo Forum as a way of specifically illustrating the benefits of these different connections. And so with that, we want to sort of say thanks. Katie and I want to say thanks as moderators to the panelists. Thank you again. It was a fantastic panel. Really, really enjoyed it. We also want to be thanking the Geo Secretariat. Both Rui and Martin were involved, but we also had Tashara. So Tashara, can you raise your hand? So Tashara was also really involved and also been running the slides over there. So really appreciate. And then the people that are involved in Geo Health, Health Community Practice, and EO for Health. And also, I said it before, really to you all, thank you for coming and really engaging on the 6 Mentimeter questions and providing us your thoughts and your inputs. Really made for an engaging session today. So thank you for that. If you do have any further thoughts, I think we're moving to a coffee break next. If you do have any further thoughts, please see any of us, introduce yourselves. Again, get their much longer bio and background. They're fascinating people. But we're going to wrap up this session and just wanted to say thank you to you all. And also a shout out to the people who have been working the audiovisual system. Really thank you to what you all have done to enable this, this panel and all that. So with that, we'll wrap it up as Earth Intelligence for All. Excellent.